get a lot of questions about our RAD Mini e-bikes. John has had his for 3 years. I've had mine for 2 years. And thanks to a viewer who left a complete outline for a video, I'm going to answer all your questions today. The list includes everything from specs to features, handling, folding, loading the bikes, accessories, security, tools, charging, and where you can ride them. And as a bonus, we have borrowed our next door neighbor's brand new RAD City bike. And we're going to take a look at that and show you some of the differences. To give you a little perspective, I'm 5'6" and John is 6'5". He really is too big for his Mini, but he makes it work. And yes, there may be a larger bike in his future, but for now we're using these. My inseam is 31 inches and John's inseam is 35 inches. Now we get a lot of comments. In fact, I got one today from someone who suggested that I needed to raise the seat. Now I have tried that. I do not raise the seat because I like my feet firmly on the ground or able to reach the ground. These are very heavy bikes. RAD claims that they can hold up to 275 pounds and they can go up to about 45 miles. And we have certainly found that that 45-mile range is certainly something doable. We like to keep the power level around 2 or 3 at the most, and then we try to get as much exercise as we can. John quite often puts his down to 1 so that he gets even more exercise. We have yet to take a ride where we wished we'd had more range. Basically, our rear end gets tired before the battery runs out of juice. The weight of the step-through model is 69 pounds with the battery, and the weight of John's bike is 67 pounds. It's 2 pounds lighter. Now, I'm also speaking from the perspective of somebody who is 66 years old, and John is 67. So our limitations are a little different than someone who's in their 20s or 30s. But RAD recommends this bike for someone who is between 4'10" and 5'10", although I think someone who is that short would struggle with the weight of a bike like this. The recommended height for someone on the other model is someone between 5'2" and 6'2". Now I have ridden John's bicycle on a number of occasions, but I am not very comfortable at 5'6". I'm not very comfortable on that bike because of the bar. It's just a little bit more difficult for someone who is in my age bracket. Now, I don't know how they ship these bikes now, but when we ordered my step-through 2 years ago, it came with slick tires. And we instantly changed it out for the knobby tires, because if you're going to do a lot of riding on sand or dirt, that sort of a surface, then we think that the knobby tires are essential. Now, some of the features of the bike that you might care about is, yes, these do fold. I have never folded my bike, so you're going to see me do it in a few minutes. It has a throttle, which I think is essential for any e-bike. This is actually my third electric bike, and I think a throttle is actually a safety feature, because if you're on a hill and you're trying to, at a stoplight or something, and you want to get up that hill, it's really helpful to have a throttle, because a 67-pound, 69-pound bike is really tough to get started on pedaling. So we think the throttle is essential. It also has front suspension, which can be locked in or adjusted, and that's helpful on bumpy dirt roads and things like that. Probably not as important if you're on hard pavement. It has a 48-volt battery, which can accept up to 800 battery cycles. We've been very happy with the way these bikes handle. We've taken them on very loose sand, and of course, it doesn't matter what you're riding in sand, you can have some difficulty. But we've taken them in mud and dirt and all kinds of rocky situations where they've handled reasonably well for a bike that is not full suspension. Now down the road, someday we would probably like to get a full suspension electric bike, but right now we've been really happy with these with the roads we take them on. Now if you're just doing kind of, paved type riding, that you'll have absolutely no problem whatsoever. But the fat tires are essential when you're on off-road situations. This is a rugged road. I don't recommend this route. One of the feature changes that was made between the year that John bought his bike and mine is that they added an integrated brake light so that when you brake, your light will actually blink as you brake. So it's like a car, more like a car light. So that, I think, is a really great feature. But I also like the feature that you can actually lock out the throttle, so you can turn that off. And probably my favorite feature, though, is the step-through part of it. I think that the step-through for people in our age bracket is another essential. I know a lot of guys shy away from step-through bikes because they think that's a girl's bike, but I'll tell you, it's a safety feature, and I have many times on some tough dirt roads or sandy roads, I've had to bail off of the bike, and it's really nice to be able to just drop the bike and jump off. So I had two falls on this trail. John had one. I didn't see it.
It was a good one, though.
Okay, but mine was great because I have a step through and I can just quickly abandon the bike. What did you do?
As the bike went down, I started to stand up to try and pedal. And because I don't have a belt, this got caught on the seat and it pulled me over faster.
John had a fall on our most recent trip to Utah, and he wasn't able to do that. And I had to go and extract him out of a really weird situation. He says, hurry, I'm hurrying. What? Oh, you got your foot stuck. Oh, man. Is that sharp? Now let's go to accessories. RAD makes several bike racks, and we've had, I think, all but one of them. We've had the front rack and a basket, the small basket, and a large basket. And then recently we added this rack to the back of my bike because the baskets interfered with us loading the bikes onto our Hollywood rack. So we took that off. The front rack stays straight when you're turning your wheels, which is a little bit disorienting. And so I didn't like that. So we took the front rack off. And now the small rack is on the back of John's bike. And we do like to have a rack because we will sometimes leave the campground and maybe go to the store to get some supplies or carry firewood or, little things like that. So it's nice to have a rack. Another feature that I added was the bottle cage. I just bought a bottle cage on sale at some bike store and added that. It's nice to have a cage. There's no place to mount really a bottle cage on this bike, although somebody sent me a picture of something that can be mounted up on the top bar. But right now we mostly keep the water in our backpacks when we're carrying those. John had originally put one of those suspension seat posts on his bike, and he didn't care for it. So he took it off and put it on his road bike, and he didn't really think it did much. But a lot of you guys say you have them and you like them. You can experiment if you want to. The only other accessory I have on my bike is a mount for my GoPro camera. And that just, you get the right clamp that goes around the handlebar and it works really well. We have not experimented with any kind of phone mounts. Now in the back of our van is where we carry our bikes, and we have a swing-away hitch from Wilco. And we have a Hollywood rack for the fat-tired e-bikes. And people often ask, well, can one person lift those bikes up on the rack by themselves? I cannot. John can do it, but I try to help him because they are so heavy. Obviously, if you're taking them off the rack, a person probably could because they've got gravity working in their favor. but they're pretty darn heavy. You can get racks that have a ramp. You could use like a small motorcycle rack, and that would work. But you can also fold them up and throw them in a car. So let's move on to that. So the funny thing is that Kim had asked how it fit into a car, and she specifically said a Subaru or a Prius. And being typical Californians, we have both. So I'm going to show how it fits in either a Prius or a Subaru. But first, as I said, I have never folded this thing before. So let's see what happens. The other thing is this bike comes with collapsible pedals, but we've lost 2 pedals on this bike. They just kind of flew off when we're on the freeway somewhere, and we replaced them, but these are not collapsible pedals. So, you know, some of the instructions say collapse the pedals first, but we'll see. So I think the first thing you do is, I think you pull that up, and then you release that. That was easy. That was super easy. I'm going to lay the bike down and then fold it. There we go. Maybe it's because I've never folded this thing that it's stiff. I don't know. There we go. Okay. And then you take the handlebars down. By the way, this seat is not the original seat. I've taken a seat off of another bike that I have because I don't think their seat is very comfortable. They do make one now that's supposed to be wider. I didn't do that soon enough. You got to do that before you do that. Again, this is my first time. Okay, this thing falls down. And then you've got this mess. So, I don't think there's any way I can get that in the van by myself. So, in fact, I know I can't. I mean, not the van, the car. So you want to help me, John? Okay. Okay, so I've gotten John to help me. Let him do it. I guess it's more important to see if it fits as opposed to whether I can lift it. Oh, the seat probably needs to come down too, doesn't it? There we go. Just awkward, very awkward. Oh. So it fits. So now let's try your Subaru. Yep, you want me to take one end of it? Transfer from one car to the other car.
One of these cars is not like the other.
Yeah, you can get, for sure you can get 2 of these in your car, but what a pain. Just get a bike rack. We did not buy these because they fold. We bought them because they were smaller in stature. And the 4-inch tire. And the price. Can't beat the price. So, there you go. And because we do a lot of camping in areas that don't have hookups, people ask, well, how do you charge your e-bike when you're on the road? Well, what we do is we charge them while we're driving, and they take about 5 to 6 hours to charge them up from an empty battery. Or we will occasionally get an RV park that has hookups, so we can charge them that way. In the summertime, we probably could charge them off of our solar from our coach batteries, but we've not tried that. We've just, basically we can get maybe 2 days worth of rides because we don't do super long rides. We'll do rides for a couple of days, and then we're driving off anywhere, you know, someplace else so we can charge them on the go. But we haven't found that to be a problem, and we don't, you know, if we really want to get a charge, we'll go to an RV park where we can get hookups. Now let's move on to tools. The bike comes with a very small toolkit, just enough probably to get the bike put together. I mean, it does come mostly put together. and it comes with the battery charger. But of course, we supplement the tools anytime we're going any distance from the van. So you can get these very small, compact little wrench sets from a lot of different places, and they come in different sizes. The one thing you do want to be aware of, though, with these big fat 4-inch tires that we have, this one has a longer reach. So this one is probably our preferred set, whereas these are a good bit smaller. You can get them from places like Park Tools. They make good sets, and they're specifically, compact for bike riders. And then we also carry a set of tools that comes in this case, but because this case takes up a fair amount of space, we empty those out into a plastic bag, into a Ziploc bag, and carry those into another bag, because when you're living out of a van, every inch counts. But if you have enough space, you can just keep it in the case. A small can of lubricant is always really helpful, and we like this little bottle of Tri-Flow, and it has the little straw so you can get it precisely where you want it to go. The most likely problem you would run into on the road is a flat tire. We've only had one flat tire, and actually we discovered it when the bike was on the rack and were able to get to an REI and let them switch it out. But we do carry a kit with us. This one has the compressed air, so you can fill it and try to limp back if it's just a small hole. It also has a patch kit in it. And we always carry a tube, because you will not find spare tubes on the road. In fact, we ran into somebody when we were in Texas last year. They had a RAD Mini, their tube was flat, and they had gone to several bike stores trying to find a tube and were not able to find one. So speaking of air, we do carry an air compressor that's built into our van. So if we're back at the vehicle, we can easily plug in turn the air compressor on and fill our tubes that way. We carry these gauges to help us fill it to the appropriate PSI. So all the tools go into a backpack. And the one thing you want to note about whatever pack you have or the one you choose, make sure that the pockets will hold the water bottles that you carry, because if you're on a dirt road, a rocky road, you're going to be doing a lot of bouncing, and the bottles can come out if you don't have a deep enough pocket or some way to secure it in there. And make sure it fits the bottles that you have, because they do come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So you want to test those out. People are always concerned about getting their bike stolen, as they should be. I think in my life I've had a couple of bikes stolen. But we carry several locks with us. Every lock can be broken into, and you can go on different different YouTube channels and watch people breaking through every single lock imaginable. There is no lock that can't be broken. So just keep that in mind. But if you spend upwards of $100, you're bound to get one that's a little bit higher quality and harder to cut through. A robber's going to try to go to one that's easier to break. So the cable kind of lock goes on the rack on our bike. When the bikes are on the rack, then it's locked to the rack. And we use one that's keyed the same as our hitch, so it makes that easier. We also have this A-Bus lock. A-Bus makes some really good high quality locks. And this is a fine lock. It's extremely heavy, so it's not necessarily something you want to carry with you when you're on the road, when you're on your bike. But this is only really good for one bike. You can't stick this through two bikes, so you got to get a lock that will actually work on multiple bikes. The other thing that we think is essential is a mirror. This is our third one of these, one for John's bike, one for mine, but I fell and my bike went on the mirror side once, so it broke, and we replaced it. No big deal. I will have links to all of these things, or everything I can find, I will have links below in the description box. But we really love this mirror. It works really well, and it helps you in keeping an eye on traffic behind you. We are often asked what we do with the bikes when we park them at a trailhead, or we're going into a place to shop or eat or something like that. Well, of course, we always lock the bikes, and we lock them to something that is secure, not something that you can just slip a lock off of. We also, if we're not comfortable in an area, we're not going to leave our bikes alone. If you're in a national park or a state park or something like that, and you want to use them, ride your bike to the trailhead and then do a hike, we've done that, and we just decided we're not going to worry about it. If they get taken, they get taken. At the campground, we carry a cover with us, and it's really for the rain. If it rains at night, we don't actually drive with the cover on our bike because it would just blow around too much. And these bikes are, companies in Seattle, and they really are made to get somewhat wet. You don't want to get some of those points wet where the battery connects. But I've got something to show you for that purpose. One thing you might want to invest in is the RAD e-bike battery cap. And it comes as a pair. One goes on the battery side and one goes on the bike side where the batteries connect. And you cover those up in case, for when you're driving, you've got the battery off and there might be rain or whatever. It's probably a good idea. It helps to keep dust out as well. There are two things we do not like about the RADs, though. One of them is the brakes. The brakes seem, at least on our bikes, they seem to be underpowered. And so, and they also squeak. So I've actually changed out my mechanical brake with the Bolton e-bike's hydraulic brake, and that has helped, especially when we're on some of these dirt roads that we ride on. You got some really steep hills, and you need just that little bit of extra. Your hands can get really tired braking for long distances. So that's the one thing. And the other thing we don't like has to do with security. This is our neighbor's brand new bike. And John has actually called them on this, and you can read about it online. But this is John's key. John seems to have a master key because we have yet to try a RAD bike that his key doesn't work on. So this is John's key, and this is our neighbor's bike. So if I mess around a little bit with the key in my neighbor's lock, I can get it to turn on. I just have to kind of fiddle it a little bit, like that. It also, I better turn it off now. I also can use this key easily on my bike. So when we're out riding, we only take one key with us because John's key works it. So that's, I think, a major flaw and something that RAD really needs to address. Because these batteries, if you were to replace that, it costs around $500 to replace the battery. Okay, so those are the two things we don't like, but obviously we live with those. Now let's talk about this RAD city bike, which is really cool, and they seem to have made some changes. One of them is the hub. I don't know anything about the hub. Maybe they just use this on the smaller diameter tires. This does not have the automatic, we have that button that turns off the throttle. This one does not have it. That's just, one of the differences, but it does have the integrated brake system. I did take this out for a ride, and it rides beautifully. The brakes didn't squeak. This bike has regenerative braking. Ours does not. And it also, something you can add on is this really great locking system. So you can lock the tire in place. I don't know that that's available for the fat tired bikes, but that would be neat to have. This one has the plastic fenders. As I mentioned earlier, John removed the fenders from his bike because, we don't really get much rain here. We don't tend to ride in the rain, so we don't need that. And also, it's something to consider when you're loading and unloading bikes is the fenders can get in the way. Oh, my neighbor did say his wife does not like the seat on this, that she wants something a little wider. And so I've told him that RAD does have the wider seat, and he can check that out. I mean, it's very cushioned, but I don't think they make bike seats for women. We need tractor seats. Uh-oh. I also want to point out how you turn the lights on the bike. You push down on the mode and the up arrow at the same time, and then that turns the lights on. Yeah. John's going to take the RAD city bike down and give it a test ride. So John's road bike is an XXL,
Yes,
is that right? A specialized XXL. So, very few people make a bike that's sized for him, that's not custom.
Yeah.
So John has been looking at the specialized bike that's $5,000, but he says before he does that, he wants to try the RAD Rover, the non-step through, for $1,500. I mean, it's just a huge price difference. The last question that Kim had was, where can you ride your e-bikes? And that can be interpreted in two ways. Where is it lawful to ride an e-bike? And what kind of roads do we ride on? So I'm going to answer both of those. First, it's a little complicated when you start talking about where you can ride an e-bike lawfully. Every state has different rules, and there are different rules between whether it's a federal jurisdiction or a state jurisdiction. So you kind of have to look at your own state. Here in California, the RAD e-bike is a Class 2 bike, which is treated the same as a regular bicycle. But that's on state property. If you're on federal property, then it can be all over the board because most Forest Service and parks do not currently allow e-bikes on trails, but that's changing. So you just have to check the particular park or forest to see where it's legal to ride them. But for sure, anywhere that and a motorcycle can ride, you can ride. Now in Utah, you could ride them on the trails in state parks, and in California, it is similar unless it's posted otherwise. So I will put a link below to a pretty good discussion of this topic that the owner of Bolton e-bikes did on a YouTube video. So I'll link that below. Now, as far as where we ride our bikes, we love to ride on dirt roads, any unpaved surface. We don't do a whole lot of riding on paved surfaces because it's kind of scary these days. So we head for the dirt, and we ride on very loose sand. We ride on rocky roads. Rocky roads are the toughest because there's no real suspension on these bikes, so they can be really tough. But dirt roads are often really nicely graded, and so those are more than fine. And because of the fat tires, you can get through some pretty thick sand where a lot of vehicles couldn't make it. Because e-bikes are really starting to explode on the market, I just encourage people to be really careful when they're around other cyclists. We don't need to get the people who ride bikes angry. I always give them a wide berth. I stop and yield to them. I stop and yield to pedestrians. So just be careful out there and be a good ambassador of riding an e-bike. I hope this video has been helpful to anybody looking into e-bikes. We have no affiliation whatsoever with RAD. There are lots and lots of options out there. RAD just has kind of taken over, I think, partly because of their price point. It's just very reasonably priced, and it's a pretty good product. Gotten 3 years out of John's bike and 2 years out of mine. We continue to enjoy them. They have really expanded our ability to get out and see areas that we wouldn't see otherwise. And we see it as a really good secondary option for transportation when you're traveling in a camper van like we are. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.